Hi, I'm Jeff Cohn of Brave Dialogue, and thank you very much for being with us today. The subject matter of the Class 8 incentives is so complex, I had to break it up into two segments. And nonetheless, it is an important topic, one in which I feel that every resident of the Southland region needs to understand, to get more involved in, and start to feel more comfortable about talking about the issue and learning about it. And so I brought back again the subject matter experts that I've asked to come and talk about this subject. So we're going to continue the conversation around the Class 8. And now that you have a little bit more, know a little bit more about Class 8 incentives, we're going to start now with the September 1st change in the ordinance. And I'm going to give our panelists an opportunity to talk about it. What's the impact to the Southland region? And most importantly, how does it impact you? So on September 1st, the new ordinance went into, Cook County ordinance went into in effect for several of the incentives. And I would like for you all to come back and particularly talk about Class 8, but what were the changes that took place on September 1st?
Well, the requirements that went into effect involve prevailing wage rates and apprenticeship programs for businesses that receive these Class 8 and Class 6B incentives.
Okay.
Now, what this does is significantly increase the cost to businesses that build or significantly renovate structures. Again, what's the solution to the high tax rates? Get more businesses. When the business costs go up, it disincentivizes those businesses coming. So those higher labor costs are a significant deterrent to attracting new businesses.
Okay, and those costs are connected to the U.S. Department of Labor's internship program, right? Just to break it down a little bit. Apprenticeship program. Mm-hmm. And also the increase in actual wage costs based on the prevailing wage, right?
Prevailing wage includes covering the costs of benefits, training, and other programs. The current prevailing wage rate for many of the construction trades in Cook County now is about $80 an hour,
okay,
where the actual wage rate might be around $50 an hour.
Okay.
So now those would be significantly lower in neighboring Will County and in Northwest Indiana.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. Chrissy, I cut you off.
I was just going to add that the September 1st date was there was legislation that was passed at the county board in March that required prevailing wage and apprenticeship program participation for contractors doing work on any of the projects associated with an incentive. So for an applicant who is coming in, and that was scheduled to go into effect, and in fact did, September 1st of 2018.
Okay.
So the new rules will apply to all recipients of incentive holders as of September 1st. And we've done an analysis, as you heard, the cost differential on some of those costs are as much as $30 an hour. We're looking, our research shows us that it's about 23 to about 35% increase in cost of doing business on any new construction project that occurs within the incentive program.
In the Southland region?
It's actually for entire Cook County. What we've been challenged by is saying in the south suburbs is saying that our projects are generally smaller size project. We use the incentive more frequently than our counterparts in the north suburbs who have different market conditions. We talked about being outcompeted by Will County and neighboring Indiana. Mm-hmm. For most of our projects, it's a given. It's what I've heard mayors say. It's an equalizer. At least it allows the municipalities to be able to continue a conversation with a prospective investor.
Wow.
And regarding the Department of Labor apprenticeship program, the challenge there is its effect on a long-standing small business. So let's say you've got an electrical company and you may need to do some repairs. You know, you're a business owner. You have some electrical repairs you need to do. Mm-hmm. You want to call the local electrician. It's probably a husband, wife, and kids that have been in business for 40 years. Well, they don't really have they won't find any value in an apprenticeship program because they've been doing it so long. However, because they're not enrolled, they're not able to bid on the project. And what effectively happens is that the larger businesses will overbid because they really don't want those smaller projects that Christy mentioned, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 square foot building. I mean, those are big wins for the south suburbs.
Right.
So what that effectively ends up doing is costing the business more money.
Wow.
And they're not able to hire the local business. And so that becomes it's an unintended consequence.
Okay.
I don't want to give the impression that I think that this was done on purpose. But this is exactly why in the south suburbs, it's one of the reasons we've been so vocal about this, because we can see where that effect will come.
Right. So, Christy, we have been vocal about this. So, September 1st just didn't happen. You, along with Mayor Owsbury, who's the president of the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association, along with other leaders, Ted's been writing about this. How have we tried to get leadership to hear how much pain this is going to inflict upon our region? And Ted, I want you to follow up on this as well.
So over the last over the last 2 years now, there's been other tinkering and amendments to the incentive program over time. So minimum wage, living wage, affidavits, other requirements on the private sector. Again, these are business owners who can take their pocketbooks and spend their money where they will, make their investments where they will. We want to try to recruit them to Cook County and to the south suburbs in particular, and try to make sure that their business goals align with the municipality's goals. We're making it harder. And so last year, we had dozens, literally every South Suburban municipality represented at various hearings at the county board over time. And in January, the prevailing wage amendment was introduced. We came down and testified at the deleterious impacts, really the catastrophic impacts that it could have on escalating cost, where our margins are too close, are too narrow because of our high property tax rates. So we again tried to showcase, and I'll give you one example. Dollar General in Park Forest, that's in existence there, pays nearly $100,000 a year in property taxes. The exact same business in Will County pays half, $48,000. The exact same business in Dyer, Indiana, 3 miles away from Park Forest, pays $1,600 a month.
You said the Dollar General, same
store, same employee
square
base,
footage.
same square footage, same construction timetable. So because we're in Cook County, because of the high property tax rates, that's the differential in what it just costs to open the doors. And so over time, as we said, the incentives are a 10-year incentive. It's $1 million in Park Forest, it's $500,000 in New Lenox, and it's $16,000 in Dyer.
Right.
What we were saying to the county board, who were considering kind of the policy of changing and adding prevailing wage, that will drive costs up even higher, and you can't sell enough paper towels to make up that difference at the Dollar General.
And so, Ted, thank you very much for that. Ted, you wrote an article that broke it down even further before the actual September 1st. That talked about square footage, the cost of property taxes per square. Why don't you share a little bit about that, because it connects very nicely to what Christy just described.
Again, it's a good way to illustrate the
Exactly.
disparity. So the strip mall per square foot property tax cost on Chicago's northwest side is $4.24, at least it was a year ago. In Dolton, that same square footage is $10.69. In Calumet City, it's $11.51, and in Hazel Crest, it's $13.17 for the exact same type of property.
And Jeff, this is, we talked in the last segment about the map. And this is the message that we have been trying to get across, is that you have to understand the map. You cannot apply, it's very difficult to apply the same things to the south suburbs.
Yes.
When you're dealing with these high tax rates. The advantage of the Class 8 was it's a very simple program.
Okay.
It was very simple, it was very predictable, and it was stable. And what that means to an investor is there's not a lot of risk, because now you're looking at a 10-year pro forma and you know what your costs are going to be.
Exactly.
Now you're talking about an entirely different situation. And so when you also add in the fact that, again, you've got a perception out there that the taxes are already high. You have a perception out there that there's not a lot of business in some of these communities. And now you add on risk and unpredictability. Well, you know, if you're a business owner, your job is to make sure that you are either satisfying your stockholders or satisfying yourself
Exactly.
financially. And you're going to make the best decision possible, and this makes it more difficult to do so. The Class 8 initially, without the additional rules, at least allowed us to, as Christy mentioned, to equalize the conversation. So I could actually move someone off of the tax situation because I can say, hey, I've got a solution there. I can reduce your level of assessment by 60% over a 10-year period and potentially renew it for another 10. So you're looking at a 20-year incentive.
Right.
And so now the investor says, oh, really? And now I can start to talk about business-friendly transportation access, great community values, workforce, and all of those things.
Okay.
Right?
Wow. Okay, so we really have got like you all said in the beginning, I've heard a complex situation that we need to obviously address, right? And so, so leadership is trying to take the more politically correct approach in terms of having conversations at the table and trying to get people to really understand that this is really, really, really going to have a very negative impact on the south suburbs. So, the question is, what do we do, right? So we can all, you know, pack up our bags and maybe consider moving to other parts, Will County, Indiana, like some people are doing, or like myself, I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to say, no, I want to protect the Southland region. So what do we do?
Well, I'll say that, as I mentioned, we started last year really organizing opposition to some of the changes, and that continued this year. We had 39 communities represented multiple times. Many of our elected officials came and testified over hearing, you know, at a public hearing that lasted 4 or 5 hours. I know, Ted, you were there and covered. John, you were there representing South Holland along with your mayor.
More like about 8.
Yeah, I mean, and there were instances where it was extremely frustrating to convey and to really know kind of what was on the horizon in terms of the south suburbs and how challenging it would be to go forward after September 1st to try to increase more diverse economic conditions in our communities and try to stabilize our communities when we were just starting to recover. So we're continuing that at South Suburban Mayors and Managers.
Okay.
We're very, you know, my mayors are very focused on this issue. This is the #1 concern for them. And many of them who've been mayors for 20 years, like Mayor DeGraff and others, the mayor of Homewood, and, you know, I could go down the list, have said this is the #1 challenge they have faced on their watch.
Okay.
And so what we understand is how it's impacting our residents, because it's stymieing economic development. It's going to make it harder for us to fill those storefronts, to bring in new businesses. And as John said in the last period, you know, life has changed. Not everyone's shopping, you know, at big boxes any longer. We're ordering things online. So those dynamics are changing along with other conditions. And it's just making it harder for us to stabilize and keep the high quality communities that we so love in the south suburbs.
Okay.
If I could give an example of the impact of the Class 8, particularly in South Holland. You know, I started in '09, right at the beginning of the recession. We had at the time 7 automobile dealers. Okay, we now have 1 automobile dealer. So we had 6 of these large buildings that needed to be repurposed in a very difficult economic time. Okay, and at the time our vacancy rate went up somewhere around 16-17%, somewhere in that area. We were able, with the exception of one of the buildings, which turned out to be a nonprofit, the other 5 we were able to repurpose, and in each one of them, the Class 8 made the difference.
Okay.
That's $20 million of investment. That's about 200 jobs that would not, on our major corridor, and we've only got about 2 miles of commercial space from the expressway down to the tracks on Route 6. So those buildings really stand out. They're very large. But had it not been for that Class 8, that would not have happened.
Okay.
We had another business, Miniat, which is a meat processor. They process meat for Chipotle noodles and places like that. $30 million expansion. In fact, they were very strongly considering moving out of state because of these situations. We were able to convince them to stay, and they spent $30 million, added 62,000 square feet to their footprint, to their current footprint, hired, I don't know, I think there are over 200 people now, new people, new jobs, and these are head of household jobs. These are not small minimum wage jobs we're talking about. But again, Class 8 makes the difference.
Sure.
And I had another business, Gertler, who was very close to going. I mean, they were all but gone to Indiana, and the main reason was they could not get comfortable with the tax situation. Okay, got them comfortable with it, kept them there. This is a business that has been there since 1982. So this makes a real impact, because if those are gone, as we talked about before, now all of a sudden that same levy has to be paid for with less assessed value.
So Ted, you wrote about in your article, you said that 4 of the commissioners actually voted against, but the rest voted for it. So at the county commissioner level, what can we do? What do you think we can start to do to get this ball rolling?